The last 2 days, that situation has changed quite a bit. We have a trap just 5 minutes down the road from here that caught 81 moths in it last night. Painter, Virginia, over the last 2 nights caught 700 in one of their pheromone traps. We use these wire cone traps. You may see some sprinkled across Route 9 when you leave today. These are not minnow traps. Please don't steal them. Last year I had one of them walk off of the farm and never found it. This year I had a piece of rebar walk off from one of my traps. Somebody picked the trap up, put it down, and took the rebar out of the field. If you need rebar, I can get you rebar. But in all seriousness, double crop soybeans following wheat that's blooming right now. This is moth candy. The moths are going to go to these fields. The females are going to feed. They need energy. And then when they're in that field, they're going to lay eggs. So when you're sweeping soybeans for earworms, you want to make sure that you're knocking leaves off. You want to hit these plants with authority, because if you're knocking leaves into your net, you're knocking bugs off of those plants and into the net as well. Last year we had an extremely intense earworm flight into soybeans and double crop beans across Sussex County. It went as far north as the Kent County line. They tend to peter out once we get north of Milford. But last year we had a field plot where we averaged 1 earworm per sweep, which is extremely high. The threshold is right around 2 to 4 earworms in 10 sweeps. There's a great threshold calculator on NC State's website, and I linked to it in the weekly crop update. If y'all don't get that, subscribe to it. It's real easy to subscribe to. It comes out on Fridays as an email, and it's also posted onto our website. Just Google search UD Weekly Crop Update. But there's a threshold calculator for soybeans run by NC State. You enter in your row spacing, your sampling method, your control cost, and your value of soybeans, and it'll give you a target number of worms in a sweep sample. Now, I've been doing a lot of work in sweet corn with different insecticide tests for earworms. And in sweet corn, we're very limited in our control options, pretty much to pyrethroids and to a couple of applications of Besiege or Elevest. And from that work, we have seen pyrethroid efficacy differences among those pyrethroids. In field crops, I do not recommend banking on that. And last year, we did have fields that went way over threshold a week after a pyrethroid application. In a more typical year, a pyrethroid may do a decent enough job to drop those earworms below threshold and keep them there, but every year is different. Do not count on a pyrethroid providing you that level of control. About 5 days after we applied pyrethroids in small plots in Dagsboro, we were well over threshold again. Besiege and Vantacor at their low rates did an excellent job knocking earworms out completely. And that was 6.5 fluid ounces of Besiege, 2 ounces of Vantacor. For those of you who aren't familiar with Vantacor, that's chlorantraniliprole that used to be marketed as Previthon or as Coragen. This here is a trap top that we pulled off the station. This is 2 nights worth of moths. And I'm just going to let these guys go. They're males. They're male moths. The only thing they're good for is for insecticide testing, so I need them to come back into a trap so I can use them as fresh moths tomorrow night. The other pest that has been very quiet this year, but certainly wasn't last year, has been stink bugs. We've got several species of stink bugs, greens, browns, and brown marmorateds. You might ask, what does it matter? They stink. The green stink bugs are real easy to kill with pyrethroids. You can kill them by shaking a jug of lambda-ci out. Brown stink bugs will laugh at a jug of lambda-ci, and brown marmorateds generally don't care as much either. So among those pyrethroids, bifenthrin is the best pyrethroid for stink bugs. We've got several blacklight traps scattered across the state. We keep a network of about a dozen traps set up, and we monitor stink bugs in those traps. This year we've been catching anywhere from 5 to 15 stink bugs a night. Last year we had a period at the middle of June, end of June, where we were catching several hundred per night. So they've been quiet. The typical pattern is for stink bug pressure to really increase in double crop soybeans. As it gets later in the season, they start concentrating in those more succulent beans to bulk up for winter. So be scouting for stink bugs in your double crops as well. Moving on, and going back to my earworm friends here, anyone here on the tour growing sorghum, especially late planted sorghum? I see one hand. I don't see anyone else jumping for joy. Late planted sorghum is also very attractive to corn earworm. It's almost as attractive as sweet corn, not quite as attractive as tomatoes. Any sorghum that is starting to shed pollen right now or later, we need to be scouting that for earworms as well. Earworms will get into the heads. And the way we do that is we take a sorghum plant, let's pretend this is a sorghum head, and bang that into a bucket. And that shakes the caterpillars off of those heads. The other pest that we are, and just like the earworm threshold calculator for soybeans, Texas A&M has an earworm threshold calculator for sorghum. Now you might say, well, I've got a fall armyworm in here, not an earworm. They do the same level of damage to the heads. Fall armyworm has been pretty quiet in sorghum, in the fields that we've been looking at. They're there. They've been very sporadic in sweet corn, approaching near threshold levels. New Jersey's been reporting fields going well over sweet corn thresholds for fall armyworm. So that's something to kind of keep in mind in late planted sorghum. Typically, they don't come into that crop enough to warrant a spray by themselves, at least in the rural states. The other pest that we have to watch out for in late planted sorghum is sugarcane aphids. Sugarcane aphids is a white aphid. It builds up into ferociously large colonies. It'll cover the plants with honeydew, and they will decrease the grain yield potential in those fields. Last year, I went out to several fields that had been severely impacted by aphids. They are sporadic. We picked up our first sugarcane aphids last Friday. I found 6 in one field. Woo! But they can build up in very quick numbers. Female will basically give live birth to a female, and 3 days later, that offspring is producing more females. The best thing that we have going for us right now is we've had a relatively cool summer, so it's slowing them down. If the temperatures were in the upper 90s, they'd be cranking through their generations very quickly. So that's another pest that is easy to forget about. Sorghum, in general, is a fairly easy to forget about crop, and that's why we spend a lot of time in the entomology lab taking a look at it to alert folks so that we're not caught by a surprise. Does anyone have questions about late season insect pests on field crops? Clear as mud? All right, good deal. Well, I'll be around later on, so feel free to come up to me later if you have questions. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Isaacs.
What David did not fail to tell y'all is these moths he just released, they have tracking devices on them. So be looking for them. They'll be glowing. Okay, let's give David a big round of applause.